one told you life was gonna be this way. Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the old way. It's like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you.
Que onda, way? Welcome back to these Chido lectures, these Mexican Revolution lectures, and now we're moving on to the next segment, the series of stages of the Mexican Revolution, the first of which is that Madero takes office. And let's see where this soap opera goes next. Last time, we talked about, and remember you guys, you never write these last time slides, only number 1, 2, and 3. This is just a review. We talked about the fact that Diaz told the American public and eventually the world, basically, that he was not going to be running for president. Then he double-backed, jailed his opposition, Francisco Madero, who somehow escaped, wrote one of many plans to come, the Plan de San Luis Potosi, which campaigned on an end to re-elections, plus no more fraudulent elections, and promised political reform and democracy. He begged for the people of Mexico to please stand up against his dictator who's ruled us for the past 30 years, but they already had begun. They had begun under Orozco and Zapata in the south. So a civil war ensues, and eventually Madero comes back in and joins forces with Orozco and Villa in the north, whereas Zapata fights against the soldiers in the south in Morelos. And after 2 important victories, both in Morelos and Ciudad Juarez in the north, Porfirio Diaz is forced to resign. He can already see what's coming in the future. Unfortunately for Madero, after signing the Treaty of Ciudad Juarez, he will lose support of the other revolutionaries who got him there in the first place because he kept the current military in power and he did not address land reform or labor reform, which were the 2 biggest issues on the public's mind. It's the reason why they were so upset with Porfirio Diaz in the first place. And Zapata and Villa and all the rebels said they would not disarm, they would not put down their guns until they got what they fought for in the first place. So, let's begin today's lecture with Zapata's challenge. I'll pause so you can write. Okay, so Zapata refused to disarm his men for many reasons. First and foremost, and one of these is a pretty big slap in the face, the fact, and we already knew this, that the Porfirista cabinet was blocking all progressive reforms. Anything that was going to change land reform or labor reform was being blocked by Maderos and the people that he kept in charge, the Porfiristas, the people that were still in support of Porfirio Diaz. In addition to that, they tried to push land issues, the idea of being able to prove that you own this land even though you did not have a deed, into a corrupt court system that once again was completely run by the científicos, the Porfiristas, that would not hear the people. But for sure, the most insulting thing that happened was that Madero offered Zapata hush money. How about you cool out, cool it, no more fighting, I'll give you this ranch, you can raise your family here and just retire. You've done a great job for the revolution. He got super pissed off after that, and he released his Plan de Ayala, which called for a return of stolen land for the people, basically no more haciendas and give us back the land you stole. He also made Orozco, the guy from the north that had fought alongside Madero, his chief officer, his general. And Orozco accepted. He did believe in the same ideology that Zapata believed in. So losing Orozco was a huge blow to Madero. Orozco was a great general. Madero was forced to look into one of the current Porfirista generals, and the ruthless Victoriano Huerta is the one that eventually would become the commander of the federal government's military. And this guy was horrible. As you will see, this will be the downfall eventually of Madero in choosing him as his commander. So Victoriano was ordered by Madero to go and find and kill Zapatas for trying to stop this revolution from going smoothly. Luckily for the people, Zapata evades capture and he goes into the mountainside to fight a guerrilla war. So here we can see Madero with his Porfiristas. Notice that these people are all generals, they're all military establishment, and they're the old ruling class. And here we can see Zapata, a very famous quote, "I want to die a slave to principles, but not to men." A man is very quotable. Here we can see a very famous painting, a mural that you can see in the palace if you ever go to the palace in Mexico City of Victoriano Huerta holding a gun to Madero's head. You will see that this will make sense. Foreshadowing, coming in the future. Madero would stick with Huerta and it would eventually be his downfall, as you will see at the end of today's lecture. So let's quickly watch this video, 4-minute video, just two today, on Madero being challenged by the other revolutionaries.
Tranquility all across Mexico, but this period of peace will be short-lived. Almost from the beginning, Madero's grip on his presidency is weak. He has the support of Villa, but loses the backing of one of his early allies, General Pascual Orozco.
Madero quería que se reformara el sistema político sin una revolución. Y cuando la revolución triunfa, él pone límites muy claros. Él no quiere desmantelar todo el sistema.
Ambassador Henry Lane Wilson has little regard for Madero. He believes Madero is the wrong man to run Mexico. Wilson sees himself as the arbiter of U.S. policy in Mexico. So he begins his own campaign to undermine the Mexican president.
Wilson is there, receiving the indications of the building coup, encouraging it, reporting very dire warnings to Washington. The country is in chaos, all our interests will be lost, the lives of Americans are in danger, despite the reports from the consuls, which indicated quite the opposite.
For Zapata, it's clear. With Madero, there is no future for agrarian reform. The entire region of Morelos starts to slip from Madero's grasp.
Zapata had revolted in the name of Madero, but Madero had never controlled him. And what Zapata wanted was an immediate land reform. Madero fought against him. He was, in the final account, an hacendado. He was not willing to agree to any expropriation of people from his own class.
Y entonces rompe el movimiento campesino con Madero. El gobierno maderista da la orden de luchar por desarmar a los zapatistas y fue una lucha muy cruenta.
Zapata promulga el Plan de Ayala el 6 de noviembre de 1911, levantándose en armas contra Madero, nombrando al jefe de esa revolución a Pascual Orozco.
Emiliano Zapata and Pascual Orozco joined forces, posing a serious threat to Madero. Orozco had been Madero's ally in the beginning, but was pushed aside because the general had defied the president at the Battle of Juarez. But the way Madero handles Orozco will come to cost the president more than he could ever imagine.
When there's the break between Madero and Orozco, Madero turns to Huerta to lead the federal troops against Orozco, somewhat reluctantly, because Huerta had a reputation already. He was a thug, he was a drunkard, he was corrupt. Huerta then goes after Orozco with complete impunity when it came to squashing the Orozco rebellion, because he saw this was the opportunity for Madero to be beholden to him, Victoriano Huerta.
So as you can see, not very happy with him. Let's continue. We'll pause real quick so you can write this down. Pancho Villa, baby. All right. So Villa was eventually still with Madero at this point, but he would quickly switch sides. He was put under the control of Huerta, the military commander, and he was instructed to go and find Orozco. They were once on a team, and now he was his enemy. But this is a real story, what I'm about to tell you. On the way to the north to find Orozco, alongside Huerta, they both got into an argument over a horse. And it got so heated that Huerta actually tried to have Pancho Villa executed. But this is a hero. I mean, this is a person that is the reason why Madero won. So eventually, as soon as he found out, he intervened, and he, instead of killing Villa outright, he imprisoned him. Eventually, Pancho Villa would escape prison and would raise an army of 7,000 people against Madero because he was so pissed off about Huerta. Now, let's review some of Madero's political mistakes at this time. So Zapata that's the guy in the south, defected because there was no land reform. He's not going to put down his guns. And he immediately offered the job as his general to Orozco, who fought valiantly in the north, and immediately accepted. So Madero lost the general that led him to the revolution. Villa defected once he was arrested over a horse. Yes, you read correctly, as ridiculous as it is. And maybe even worse than this, Huerta, who wanted to kill Villa, felt betrayed when he was not allowed to. He considered Villa a bandit, and he would eventually backstab Madero. So here we can see a very funny photo of, I was able to find a Villa with a horse. You better give me that horse. And Huerta's face, if I can't kill him, then I'll kill you, Madero, as you will see in the next slide. These are the northern soldiers that would return eventually with 7,000 to defeat Madero. So you can see the soap opera is going strong here. Your final slide for today, Huerta's coup d'etat. I'll pause real quick. All right, so these are los 10 días trágicas, the 10 tragic days. So 4 generals went behind Madero's back, with the help, of course, America's always involved, with the help of the United States ambassador, which we'll learn about next class. I don't want to confuse you just yet. And they organized an assault on the presidential palace where Madero was living in Mexico City, the capital. Now, Huerta pretended to protect Madero. He said, you know, I'm your general, I'm your main man, I got you, don't worry. But behind his back, he met with the other generals in secret. One of the generals is actually Porfirio Diaz's nephew, just to give you an example of who's really going to return in charge now. And Huerta allowed for more supplies to enter the city so they could extend the battle for up to 10 days and eventually force negotiations on Madero. So after 10 days, Huerta showed his true colors and overthrew Madero. Now Madero resigned, hoping to at least save his life. He exchanged his resignation for at least safe passage out of Mexico, but instead he was put under house arrest, and when the situation calmed down, they just straight up assassinated both him and his vice president. So this is going to be the leading story here. You're going to see that this soap opera, all the revolutionary leaders are all going to die eventually, somehow, some way. So Huerta was now the interim president made by Congress. Remember that Congress is completely controlled by Porfirian elites. And the Catholic Church and the military are all very happy to have one of their own back in power. This is not good for the rebellion. And as you will see next time, it will be a huge effort to get rid of Victoriano Huerta, a very evil dude. So here we can see a fake plan, a plan for survival for Madero, but it was all a sham. And here we can see that in Spanish it's called La Decena Trágica, the 10 tragic days when they destroyed that museum, modern-day museum, the palace. And here's a painting of Victoriano Huerta, basically dethroning both the president and the vice president right here, eventually killing them. And here's a map of what went down here. This happened 2 years later, so 1912 is when the Huerta coup happens. And we can see that Zapata is still fighting in the south, and Orozco's having an uprising in the north. We don't go into detail much about this. This will make more sense soon. One last video for today, about 3 minutes, about the coup d'etat. I'm actually going to show you a second video that I found from the Mexican government. So here's one.
Typical caudillo, the man on horseback in Latin American politics, and Henry Lane Wilson saw him as superior to Madero.
Ambassador Wilson keeps up the pressure. He argues that by removing Madero, U.S. interests will be protected. The ambassador grows even closer to Huerta, and the plot to eliminate Madero takes shape.
Y en 1913, el embajador norteamericano juega un papel determinante en el golpe de Estado de Victoriano Huerta.
The warning came very clearly to Wilson from Huerta that they were going to make a move against Madero. And so you have a kind of shadow play. Wilson is taking his initiatives, but he has inside information.
In February 1913, Mexico City is engulfed in a flood of violence. It's a war zone. Known as the 10 Tragic Days, this horrendous battle, begun as a mutiny, is orchestrated by Huerta to destabilize the Madero government. Behind the scenes, Ambassador Wilson continues to support Huerta.
a principios de 1913, las condiciones están ya perfectamente dadas para que Victoriano Huerta, junto con un grupo de militares porfiristas, decida ejecutar al presidente Francisco I. Madero y al vicepresidente José María Pino Suárez.
On February 18th, President Madero and Vice President Pino Suárez are arrested in a coup arranged by Huerta with the blessing of Ambassador Wilson. Madero's wife goes to Wilson and begs him to intervene and save her husband's life. He tells her, "Your husband's downfall is due to the fact that he never wanted to consult with me." Huerta's men tip off the prison guards that there may be an attempted prison break by dangerous criminals. On the night of February 22nd, just outside the walls of the Lecumberri prison, Madero and Pino Suárez are assassinated. Huerta becomes president of Mexico.
And here's a second video now.
On February 9, 1913, a group of Diaz supporters rose up against President Madero, thus setting off what came to be known as the 10 Tragic Days. Victoriano Huerta was appointed military commander to contain the rebellion, but he soon betrayed Madero and joined the rebels. There followed 10 days of bloody combat here in the city center and at the fortified barracks of La Ciudadela. Under the auspices of U.S. Ambassador Henry Lane Wilson, the so-called Pact of La Ciudadela was signed on February 18th, disavowing Madero's government and naming Huerta interim president. Madero and Vice President José María Pino Suárez were assassinated here on the 22nd, the former site of Lecumberri prison. Madero's death would fan the revolutionary flames. 200 years of being proudly Mexican. This is the Bicentennial.
Pretty horrible stuff, man. Pretty horrible stuff. It is a day that is still remembered, the 10 tragic days, because of what a slap in the face was to the idea of democracy. They just, in cold blood, killed this man who fought for democracy, for political power for the people. Next time we'll be covering Huerta's dictatorship and eventually his demise. So returning back the clock, back to a Porfirio-style leadership once again. Pretty sad day for the Mexicans. We'll see you next time.